Hi, this is Jeremy Brown with MoveEd. Welcome to our first video series on our YouTube channel covering breath, specifically a breathing technique that I call 3D in 3D. 3 diaphragms in 3 dimensions. We're starting our first video series on breath because it is the place that I start with every new client that I work with. It's the place that I start every session with every client, regardless of how long we've been working together, and the place that I start every class, bringing awareness to the breath, the way the breath is moving in your body, the way that it's providing support and ease to our physical system. There are a lot of ways that you can focus on breath. You can focus on, of course, meditation, mental stress, focus, but I like to use breathing to focus on the physical system, to focus on muscular recruitment, alignment, core control, and posture. Breathing is a really interesting process for this because it is both an autonomic process, or a subconscious action, but also a conscious action, meaning that, of course, you're constantly breathing. Whether you focus on it or not, your body's always taking in air, putting out air. And that breath has a shape to it. That shape supports our posture. That shape supports our alignment and our movement. But it is also an action that we can have conscious control over it. If you think about, and we will think about, the way that your breath is moving in your body, you can start to shift that. You can start to have a focus of your breath happening in different places, in different ways within those places, moving bones differently, using muscles differently. And over time, as you work on shifting your conscious control of this action, that automatically trickles into this autonomic process, changing the way the breath is constantly working, the way the breath is constantly providing support, ease, and alignment within your system. So that makes it one of the most powerful ways we can start to influence change within movement in the body. It provides core control and alignment because breath, as we'll cover in 3 diaphragms, runs all the way from the top diaphragm at the thoracic, through our respiratory diaphragm in the middle, and all the way to the pelvic diaphragm at the bottom. So that affects movement all the way from T1, our top of our thoracic vertebra, all the way down to our tail or our sacrum where the pelvic floor attaches. Now, I am going to use some big words in this. I'll be throwing out some definitions in the side to cover what we're talking about if you're interested. This video series is going to include 6 videos. 3 of the videos are exercise videos, me and a client on the mat, just getting down into some breathing exercises, working our way through the body, 1 segment at a time, 3 videos, working from the bottom to the top, bringing awareness to the breath, to the shape of the breath, trying to alter that, start to bring a different consciousness to our breathing. And the other 3 videos are explanatory videos, breaking down the anatomy and physiology of these different diaphragms in the body, why we'd want to use these breathing techniques, how they provide different support, how they start to affect our shoulder, our hip, our spinal alignment dynamically, and also just some whys as to why do we want to change our breath? Why is this important? Why is this a better way to get into our system than cueing our abs or cueing alignment? Now, that's what this video is about. Why we're working on breath, which in my opinion is the most valuable thing for anyone to work on. Circling back to why we would want to start to change these things. So, core control and alignment, all the way, again, from the top of our spine where it affects our neck and shoulders, all the way down to the base of our pelvis where it affects our lumbar spine and our hips. And so this can affect the way that we provide support for spinal motion, regardless of it being extension or flexion, rotation, side bending. It starts to change the way that we provide support for shoulder motion in all directions and hip motion in all directions. It starts to bring all of those systems into one umbrella of cueing. And what we end up with if we're not trying to influence the breath is a very piecemeal cueing, which I would actually refer to all of these cues falling under an umbrella of bracing. Bracing cues are cues that you often hear within movement if you work on any movement practices, like draw the shoulders down, draw the shoulders back. Even the idea of letting the shoulders relax, I would qualify as a bracing cue. Drawing your core in, pulling your belly button in towards your spine, pulling your pubic bone towards your belly button, pulling your pubic bone up, pulling your ribs down, pulling your ribs back, pulling your ribs together, squeezing your glutes, tightening your glutes, squeezing your hamstrings. All of these things are bracing cues. And I like to break down language a lot. So we're going to break down the language of that. What I mean by a bracing cue is it is a cue that is being used to help provide stability within a movement, but it takes away movement potential. Meaning this cue, say for instance, drawing the shoulders back, may help provide a greater ease of motion for me reaching my arm back. But if I'm pulling my arm back, it is a negative bracing cue that impedes my natural ability to reach my arm forward or upward, limiting the range of that motion. So, or for instance, if I pull my belly button in, that is a bracing cue for my lumbar spine, supposedly providing a decompressive effect on the lumbar spine, but that cue changes the alignment of my hip socket, changing the potential for my hip to move back into extension or swing behind me. Also inhibits the ability for my lumbar spine to move into extension or for my spine to move into extension at all. Often if we look at a cue like pull the belly button in, it even crunches down the chest and the shoulders. I point all this out because these cues become unnecessary if we start to look at the underlying mechanics of what's happening and change it via breath. And also these bracing cues are hard for the body to hold because they are not natural. So my clients often find, I often find that if you are not focusing on those cues, they drift away because they are not natural within our system. Unlike redefining the shape of our breath, changing the way that the breath is moving into our body. As I noted before, if you start to change the conscious pattern of the shape of our breath, it automatically has a trickle-down effect into that subconscious action. So over time, these ideas, these cues become naturally integrated in our body, in our alignment, and in our movement. This can affect the way we do activities of daily life, ADLs, can affect the way we naturally sit, the way we support our head and neck, and our shoulders and our hips, but it can also affect the way that we do exercise, the way we have core control, the way that we do weight training. It can have a huge impact on pain issues and alignment issues within the body that are causing pain. And the stats on these things are really staggering. A lot of people think when they stumble into pain that there's something that's gone wrong with their body. And often, based on the input that they get back from professionals, there's very little that they are able to do. And I find nothing could be further from the truth. I help people in chronic pain every day. That's been my career for the last 15 years. And again, the number one tool I use for that is breathing. People get tired of me circling back to breath, but it almost always works. So some stats on pain. An estimated 80% of people will experience lower back pain in their life. In 2019 study, 29% of adults experienced lower back pain in the last 3 months. Neck pain has an annual prevalence rate exceeding 30% in adults. So almost a third of people experience neck pain within a year. Among adults, up to 70% within their lifetime will experience neck pain that has a negative impact on activities of daily life, meaning you're unable to get through your day without neck pain. Almost 3/4 of people. Only 10% of these people within those 3/4 actually have issues such as cancer or rheumatoid arthritis that are causing this to happen. The rest of them are all simply structural alignment issues. For shoulder pain, there is a lifetime prevalence of 70% of adults with shoulder pain. A published study quoted that almost 15% of adults experienced hip pain in the previous 6 weeks to the study. It's a pretty large number within a month and a half. So You look at that and you say, well, Jeremy, a lot of this is structural. A lot of these things are impingement syndromes and labral tears within the hip or shoulder, rotator cuff damage, disc degeneration, stenosis, bulging discs. Yes, absolutely. And what do we know about these structural changes? Well, we know that if someone is in pain from a structural issue, like a disc degeneration, a disc bulge, and they go in for therapy, which unfortunately, in my opinion, is not as focused on breathing as it should be, often more focused on manual therapy, which is wonderful, but on bracing cues, which I think have a long-term negative effect. But we'll circle back to that. They go back to this therapy, and it does provide them temporary relief. They experience some relief from pain for some amount of time. What we would find if we went back, and this has been done, and we did a scan on these people, we would find that the disc bulge or disc degeneration or the stenosis that they initially came in with is still in existence. It hasn't changed. The osteoarthritis hasn't changed. The level of pain, the symptoms have changed. Some of that's neural, the way our brain perceives pain within the body, the way it's programmed to have pain triggers. But some of that is a structural, not a structural, but a postural realignment that helps to relieve compression, wear, or tear, or shearing across these structural issues. Meaning, if you have a disc bulge and you're not grinding and squishing away at it, it causes less symptoms. A 2015 study found that regarding disc degeneration, 37% of 20-year-olds had asymptomatic disc degeneration, meaning almost half, more than a third, had disc degeneration that was not producing a pain response. Just there. 96% of 80-year-olds were found to have disc bulges or disc protrusions that were asymptomatic, meaning almost everyone has structural issues. Structural issues do not cause pain. They are part of what makes pain happen, and we know that, but we know also they are not the end-all be-all of pain, what causes pain or what causes pain to persist. And in my very successful practice of dealing with chronic pain, people in chronic pain, the most useful tool I have found to make profound change is breath. It is because it is a way to promote natural and healthy movement, natural and healthy alignment through everything, covering, as we said before, all the way from the neck, all the way down into the hips and legs, through the shoulders, and down to the hands. It is the thing that links together movement from our feet to our eyes to our hands and helps them all to integrate into one system. And again, as said before, since we are changing an automatic process, over time we are making changes that you do not even have to be aware of. Just something that is happening constantly as you live your life. So there are some other things that our breath does for us that I'll cover really quickly because I think they're fascinating, and I won't delve into them too much because my focus is on the physical breath, the anatomy and kinesiology and physiology behind breath, how that affects alignment, how that affects support and posture. But breath is a meeting place of mental, emotional, and physical stress. It's the place where all of that gets tied together within our bodies. And some of that stems from an evolutionary process. If you think about fight or flight and the way that response is triggered in our body, the way that adrenaline response is triggered in our body, and the way it changes our breath, it ties together a high focus mental state, a high anxiety stress response state, and a physically stressed response breath. We all know what that huge panting breath feels like. What's interesting in today's world, where we obviously don't have the stress response triggered by being chased by lions and tigers, often we attribute this stress response to small items within our day-to-day life, allowing minor inconveniences to trigger a massive change in our physical, emotional, and mental state, triggering a flight or fight response, triggering an anxious breath. This is one of the major reasons that I think we do all need to work on retraining breathing. All of us are being trapped within our breath in a constant anxious and tense shape or state. And as we start to shift that shape physically, it has a trickle-down effect into both the mental and emotional aspect of our breath as well. So we make changes across all three of those states as we change our breath, and this is a well-documented phenomenon. There are so many resources out there covering breath and its effect on other processes. There is a book by James Nestor called Breath that was a best-selling book just recently. It covers the entire span of breathing and how it affects our emotional and mental state, and covers a lot of breathing techniques you can use to affect that, including Wim Hof breath techniques or Buteyko breath techniques. I'll provide some links to those. Breathing techniques for meditation. All of these things are fantastic tools and fantastic ways to use the breath. I hope that you'll take some time to explore all of them, but I especially want you to take the time to explore the way breath could provide better physical support for our and core control and alignment for our movement system. So that's available in our other 3 videos where we do some exercising. Hope you'll check those out. If you thought this was interesting at all, please, as always on YouTube, click the like, subscribe button, share it with your friends and family, anyone you think would find this of value. Look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks a lot.